everyone, this is Peggy from Eli Marie Studios. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a tutorial for my 6x6 I Love Halloween mini album. Before we start, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who watched. That video took off. I was just so surprised and so, I don't know, tickled pink that people would want a tutorial. I just started sharing my albums online kind of like a month ago. And so that was really flattering, and it was really gratifying to see that people wanted to make the album that I made. So today we're going to do a tutorial, and I just wanted to thank all of you who watched that video, who liked the video, and who requested a tutorial. It really meant a lot. So we're going to jump right in. I have all of my materials pre-cut and labeled. And then I also will have the cutting guide listed down in the description box as well, so you can download that for free. So what we're gonna start off with is just three pieces of chipboard, really. Let me set these aside so I don't misplace them. So 3 pieces of chipboard, both are going to measure. So actually, let me mention first. So I kind of resized this a little bit. I think in my original album, it was 6.5 by 6.5. But I wanted to resize it down a little bit so that if you were using, like I know a lot of people do, and I do as well, is the 6x6 paper pads. So if you're going to do a 6x6 paper pad, I resized this to 6.25, so that you could do that. If you do want to make it the full 6.5 by 6.5, just go ahead and resize everything by just 1/4 of an inch on each side. So very easy to do, but I wanted to do a 6.25 by 6.25 to kind of make it a little bit more accessible for those who would like that. So we're going to start off with 2 pieces of chipboard that each measure 6.25 by 6.25, like I mentioned, and then a spine that measures 2 by 6.25. So I just use, for my glue, I just use the Barely Art glitter glue. I really don't use score tape or anything. I have a really small craft space. It's just in my bedroom that I share with my partner, obviously, so we have space for both of us in here. But I have my desk, and that is it. So I don't have a lot of space for all of the big, score tapes and everything, so I just use the glue. So if you use score tape, go for it. But this is how I do it. So, to each their own. So for this album, I really don't measure my paper. Maybe I should, but I don't. I just use kind of whatever scraps I have, and then lay it out and kind of measure as I go. So the paper that I have been using for my albums is just the 12 by 12 black scrapbook paper from Michaels. It's just the Recollections brand. It's definitely not the sturdiest paper, but if you're just gonna bind an album and create pages that you're later going to add more or like heavier cardstock to, I find that it works perfectly. I've never had any issues with it whatsoever. So that's what we are going to use. So this is it right here. It's just the 12 by 12. So again, I really don't measure, but what I do know is that you need 1 inch on each side. So that would make this, at least we would need 8.5 inches this way. So you could just use an 8.5 by 11 paper. I'm going to use the 12 by 12 just because I like the quality of the paper a little bit better, but definitely do it how you want. So I'm going to measure this out to, we'll just do 8.5, and then I'll just leave it the full 12 by 12 and we'll see where we get. So let me get my paper trimmer. All right, 8.5, nope, 8.25 by 8.25, just like that. So we'll have some left over. That's okay, we'll use it. So I'm gonna just use my mat here. I have a glass craft mat from We Are Memory Keepers. I just got this at Michael's. I love it. It's great. So I know that here's the inch mark right here. So I'm just gonna add my glue pretty liberally on my covers. And glue this down. I just eyeball it. It's really, you know, you don't have to be super precise on this part. So there's generally 1 inch. Let me grab my scraper. Actually, I'll flip it over and just kind of burnish that down. Make sure that glue is nice and stuck down. And then I'm going to add my spine. So this is the 2 inch by 6 1/4. So I just stick that, I just eyeball it. I really don't, I don't know, I don't fuss over it too much. Maybe I should, but I don't. Part of me is like, I would rather just get to the decorating, and as long as it's stable and sturdy, that's all that matters. So there we go. So I know I'm gonna need at least, let's see. So that's like 1, 2, 2.5. So I'm gonna need at least like another 6 inches or so. So let me cut that to, what did we say, 8 1/4? 8 1/4, and let's do, we'll do like 6 1/2. Just kind of eyeball it. And if we have a little excess, we have a little excess. That's okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna add some glue here. I'm gonna glue, uh-oh, I did the wrong side. You know what, that's okay. That will be our excess side. Let me just get a tissue, wipe that off. No big deal. All right, so we'll just stick that down here. It's okay if it's not like totally the right size. It's like a little bit off, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. It's all gonna get folded in anyway, and we can always trim. So let's stick our paper or our chipboard down. Just like that. Again, I just eyeball it. I typically use, normally I just use the art glitter glue actually for my album covers, but I ran out. I used to use art glitter glue for everything, but I find it dries so quickly that you have very little time to like course correct. So I started using Barely art glue, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So now I pretty much just use the art glitter glue for my covers, and then everything else I use Barely art for instead, because I think it just gives you a little bit more flexibility. So if anyone else has found that, let me know. Or if you have a different glue that you like sometimes they're definitely a little bit on the pricey side. So if anyone knows of one that's just as good, doesn't warp the paper, let me know in the comments, because I would be interested in trying some others. So we need to now fold over our edges onto the chipboard. Before we do that though, I'm just going to take my scissors and trim off the edges. And actually I'm just going to kind of clean this one up a little bit. It's a little bit easier to cut the corners when the paper is even on both sides. And I might have cut that one a little too close. It's okay, I just kind of eyeball it. I've seen those like corner tools, and maybe I'll get one in the future, but I haven't been able to find one that's like not super expensive and then comes in bulk. So if anyone knows of one that's just one singular corner tool and doesn't cost like $30, please let me know. So before we fold everything over, I'm just gonna run my bone folder down the length of each of these sides, just to kind of prime the paper a little bit. Am I even in camera? Can you guys see me? Yeah, I am. It just kind of makes it a little easier to fold. And then I just kind of bend up the paper a little bit, because once you have the glue on there, you got to act kind of fast. And if you're trying to do this while the glue is on there, it's definitely much harder. So I just kind of loosen those paper fibers up now, because then it makes gluing a little easier. So, all right, so now I'm gonna go back and add my glue. I add it right against the seam. I learned to make these from Tiffany at Let's Get Scrappy. She was the one that I first started watching and learning from when I was making albums. And that's what she does. And I found that it works great. It definitely helps everything adhere a little bit more. So there's one side, and everything's, this one definitely, this glue, it takes a little bit of time to adhere. The art glitter glue is like immediate, which is why you have like no wiggle room and you have no like grace period to kind of readjust things, which is partly why I use it for covers, because they're not as fussy, you know, but it makes it harder for the pages. And once you add the decorative paper, it's definitely much harder to use the art glitter glue. But when you use the Barely, I mess up the names, the Barely art glue, it definitely takes a little bit more pressure and like constant pressure on your covers than with the art glitter glue, because it just kind of wants to pop up. It hasn't quite adhered yet. All right, so quick burnish to both of these. Okay. All right, and then it's time to fold over the side. Yeah, so you see how I kind of trimmed this one a little too close, which is why I actually save my corners. And sometimes if I trim it off too much, I'll just cover that kind of like boo-boo area with one of my corners, and nobody knows. Just like that, because it all gets covered with pattern paper anyway, and then it's just covered and it's not a big deal. I know that Tiffany from Let's Get Scrappy just colors hers in with black Sharpie, but I find that there's a little bit of a color difference. Like I can tell, maybe other people can't tell, but I can tell. So this one, I just prefer to kind of cover everything back up with the little corner that I chopped off, just to kind of keep it all the same color, the same material. Oh yeah, see, I've got a little too much glue there. Give it a little burnish. And I'm just gonna go, while I'm here and I've got my glue wet, I'm just gonna add my cover back in, or my corner. Just like that. Ta-da! All better. And I can even do it over here. I think my corners on my other side are fine. Well, I don't know, we'll see. Just looking at them, it looks like they're probably fine, but I definitely chopped these ones a little close, which is why the corner tool will definitely come in handy, but I really don't want to pay $30 for one if this is just the kind of, if this is as easy it is to fix it, then that's all I need. There we go. All right, so last edge. Yeah, see, that one's fine. Just like that. So burnish that down, and there we go. First part of our album is done. Just like that. All right, so for our spine, let's see, where did I put? Ooh, did I cut the spine? Maybe I didn't cut the spine. I think I probably didn't cut the spine. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Again, I just kind of eyeball it. I really don't measure all that much. So here's like this piece will do just fine. And again, it doesn't need to be super precise. I'm not even gonna use my paper trimmer. I think what I'm gonna do, I have 3 signatures. So I know I'm gonna need at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At least 8 score lines. 9, 10 technically. I know I'm gonna need at least 10 score lines. So what I'm gonna do, because there's a 1/2 inch in between each. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pull out my score pal and I'm just gonna score. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. I know I need 8, right? So this whole thing is 10. We're just gonna start at 4.5. We'll do 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll do 8.5, and you know what, we'll add 4 on this side. So all I'm gonna do is, I know I need, let me move this so you can see. I need a 1/2 inch gusset between each page. So here's my first page, just like that. Can you see this on camera? I don't know if you can. So here's my first page, right? So I'm gonna glue these two together, and then here's my gusset. So then I know that this piece has to go up here. And fold down the next side. So I've got my 2 pages, just like that. And I've got my 1/2 inch gusset. And then my 2 pages, just like that. So I've got 1, 2, 3, there we go. And then I have an extra score line that I didn't even need. So this whole thing, I will have the measurements in the cutting guide below, but this whole thing is 12 inches. And then I scored on every half mark, starting at 4. I could have just started at 4.5, but 4 all the way to 8.5. And then you just fold so that you have a 1/2 inch gusset in between each page. So, or in between each signature rather. So I'm just going to glue that. There we go. There's my hinge. Just gonna kind of loosen those up a bit. The more you do this before you glue into your album, the easier your pages are gonna turn and the flatter they're going to lie. So loosen up those fibers before you glue it in, or even once you glue it in is fine, but just before you glue your pages in at least. So I'm gonna just add, and again, this is where people use score tape. You don't have to. I don't, just because I really don't have the space to keep the big score paper sheets. But if you really wanted to, you could. It might work better. I've heard that people do that just so that it long term it stays a little better, but I've been making these for a couple years now and I've never once had an album fall apart. So I put my glue on my paper. I'm just gonna flood this seam with a little bit of glue. Add some more here just for a little bit of extra slip and slide. Once I put my hinges down, it gives me a little extra time. And then I will pop everything. I'm just gonna eyeball it generally right here. I just wanna make sure my hinges aren't on the seams themselves. Yeah, I'm gonna move that up a little bit and then move this over a smidge. All right, there we go. So lay that down, burnish it out. We'll do the same in the middle here so that the hinges lie flat. All right, so once I'm confident that this is stuck down enough and my hinge isn't going to move anywhere, not really, I'm going to find, and I kind of pre-bent them ahead of time, but here's my where the chipboard folds, and I'm just going to run my score or my bone folder right in this groove, just like that, because I want to press that paper down into the glue that I put there. And that's it. I'll do the same thing on this side. Let's see, it was right here. And you don't want to press too hard here because you don't want to rip your paper, because there is a little bit of space, but you just want enough to kind of adhere it to the glue that we flooded that hinge with. And there you go. There's our album cover. Easy peasy. So just like that, there's our album cover. So I'm gonna set this aside. I know some people add their pages while they're making the album cover. I personally don't do that. I find it really hard to lay down the pattern paper like that. So I'm just going to set my album cover aside, and then we will work on the pages individually. So you're gonna need 3 pieces of cardstock that measure 5, can you see this? It's kind of dark. I didn't have a white pen, so I just used pencil. But it's 5 3/4 by 6 3/4, and then you're gonna score at 1/2 and 6 1/4 on the 6 side. I'm going to miter my corners. So I've already gone through and cut and scored everything, just to kind of save some time, but feel free to pause the video and do that. And then I will have all of the measurements, including the cutting and the scoring, down in the description box below. So I'm going to go ahead and fold those in. I'll just do all 3 while I'm here. All right, so these are each going to be the one side to my page inserts, or my pocket pages rather. So those will go here. And then the next thing you're going to need for the other half of the pocket page is 3 pieces of cardstock that measure 5 3/4 by 6 1/4, and you are going to score, let me go this way, you're going to score at 5 3/4 on that 6 edge, and this is what is going to connect to our hinge. No, that's not right. That doesn't even make sense. Oh, did I do this backwards? I bet I did this backwards, because you don't even need that. All you have to do is just connect it here. Okay, hang on. We're gonna troubleshoot this. Did I do this backwards? I bet I did this backwards. Oh, I did not. You know what I did? You don't need this. Okay, so disregard. You just need, or 5 3/4 by 5 3/4 rather. That's it. That's all you need. So I'm gonna just glue, because you want a square page. So there are my 3 pocket pages. Those will just slip right into onto our hinges when we're ready. So let's go ahead and set those aside, and we will add all of our elements. So on page 1, we have 2 panels that open up. Let me see. 2 panels that open up just like this. They open up just like that. In my original album, I added eyelets here and then closed everything off with some seam binding, but you could absolutely add either a sticker from the sticker sheet, one of the cut aparts, add a magnet closure. You could do it however you want. The paper that I used, that was just kind of what fit the character of the paper, but it is totally up to you. So either way, you're going to need 2 pieces of paper that measure each 3 3/8 by 5 3/4, and you're going to score at 1/2 inch this way, kind of down the side, and then that is going to just glue right onto the edges of your paper. I'm going to miter my corners. I know some people miter, some people don't. I am definitely in the miter camp. I think it just cleans everything up real nice. Let me make sure I have the right opening. I do. I've done that before where I've built all of my pages and then realized that I've not put the paper on the right way. So then when I went to add it onto my my hinge, I couldn't. And that is the absolute worst, when you put in all of that work and you can't even adhere it to your album. So definitely double check. Make sure that you're going the right way. So side number 1. I'm gonna adjust that one a little bit. See, this is what I'm talking about. Fairly Art gives me a little bit of wiggle room, and Art Glitter Glue does not. So fold these, give it a burnish. I just use, it depends on the paper that I'm using, but I usually just use 65-pound cardstock to make my albums. I find it's a much more affordable alternative, and then once you bulk everything up with the pattern paper, it's completely fine. Although sometimes if I want to use a colored paper, I will use the 110-pound cardstock, or if it's a bigger album, I will definitely use the 110-pound cardstock because it just makes it a little bit sturdier. But for an album this size, just go ahead and use the 65-pound. It will be totally fine. So there is our first page, That's it. You could absolutely add more elements. You could add pockets here. You could add flips and flaps and whatever you want to do. But it kind of depends on, in my opinion at least, it depends on the paper that you're using, the collection kit or the pattern paper. So I just leave it blank, and then as I start adding the colored paper and the collection kit, sometimes I change and sometimes I add more elements. But for right now, there's your first page. All right, so the second page, you're going to add a pocket, and then you're also going to have a cut apart little flip open booklet that goes right into that pocket. So for the pocket, you're going to need a piece of paper that measures 6 3/4 by 3 1/4, and you're going to score at 1/2 on all 3 sides. So let me go ahead and miter these corners. And I'll stick that onto my paper. I am only going to stick down this bottom flap here because I'm going to add pattern cardstock in here. And then if you add the other 2 sides of your pocket, it makes it really challenging to add that pattern paper. So I'm just for right now going to glue down this bottom side. So that will go right. Make sure I got it lined up right. That will go right here. And then when I'm ready, I will fold these in and glue down the rest of the sides, but only once I've added my paper here. I also added a note to myself. I drew a little M in a circle to remind myself to put the magnet there. Got that tip from Tiffany at Let's Get Scrappy. Because I always, every single time, forget to add my magnet. So if I write myself a little note, I won't forget. So there's our pocket. For the photo mat insert, you're going to take a piece of paper that is 4 1/4 by 9 1/2, and you're going to score at 4 1/4 on the 9-inch side. And then that will just slip right in here. But again, you don't want to glue anything down or add your magnets until you have your paper. So that's page number 2. Super easy. All right, page number 3. Let me clear away some of my scraps. Page number 3, also a very simple page. This just has a flip up flap, and that's it. So you're going to need a piece of paper that's 5 3/4 by 4 1/4, and then you're going to score at 1/2 inch on this 4 1/4 side. So let's get that added in. And again, you could add a cut apart, you could add a sticker from the sticker sheet, you could just use regular old magnets. It's kind of how you want to fasten it and adhere it. Again, just kind of let the paper or the collection kit that you work with just kind of lead the way. Because it really, like, there's no one size fits all. And you might realize like halfway through building an album that even if you're following a tutorial, you might like something else better. So there you go. There's our flip up for page 3. And again, I reminded myself for the magnet, where I will almost always forget is to remind myself here that there's a magnet. So I'm going to go ahead and add that little note in for myself right there. So there you go. There's page 3. Page 4, we have a double pocket. So what we're going to do, you need a page, or you need a pocket that is, or a piece of paper rather, that is 6 3/4 by 3 7/8, and then you're going to score again on all 3 sides. So I'm going to go ahead and miter my corners. And again, I'm only going to lay down this first paper, or this first side here. That's it, because I'm going to go back and add my pattern paper. So let me glue this down. Make sure I'm lined up. Yeah, there we go. I folded that over just so I could size it up, make sure that I was on the line. And actually what I didn't do on my previous page, but I'm going to do here, and I'll go back and do it on the other page too. Again, I learned this from Tiffany at Let's Get Scrappy. Just take a piece of Scotch tape, if you have a pocket like this, and just tape over your seam right here. It doesn't have to go the full way, because once you add your elements or your cut aparts, photos, whatever's inside, they can very easily get caught on the seam of the paper, and then that will make it really hard for those elements to go inside, and it could very easily damage your album. So you definitely don't want that to happen. So just add a piece of Scotch tape and you get that little bit of a slip and slide that ultimately protects your album and then just makes the experience a little bit smoother. So I'm going back and adding it on my second page, just like that. Okay, so for page 2, we're not quite done yet. I have the second piece of paper you're going to need is a 5 3/4 by 2 inch, and I'm actually not going to add it yet. Let me fold these over so you can kind of see what this will look like. But here's our pocket, right? And we're going to create a double pocket, and I'll put a picture up here somewhere so you can see it in the original album. That album actually sold within like 2 days of it being posted, which was amazing. It was incredible. But it means that I don't have it to show you in person. So with this 5 3/4 by 2 inch, you're going to glue that right here. But I want to add my pattern paper first so that you have this deeper pocket on this side to put like a full photo or cut apart in. But then you have this mini pocket that's very, very shallow here. So you would just glue that on 3 sides right here. But I'm not going to glue it yet because I want to add my pattern paper first. So I'm just going to paper clip that here so that I don't lose it, because otherwise I definitely will if I just leave it there to myself. And then we're going to start on page 3. So page 3 is a Z fold, or includes a Z fold. And you could do this a variety of ways. I chose the 4x4 method because a lot of the paper collections I've been using lately, and the one that I used in this original, or for the original album, had 4x4 cut aparts. So I created a Z fold so that you could feature one of the 4x4 cut aparts here. So I just pulled, again, it's the 12x12 cardstock. If you use 8.5x11, you could just kind of resize this. You might have to use one additional piece of paper, but I just took one of those 12x12s, sliced it in 2, and I scored, or rather it's 4 1/4 by 12, and I scored at 4 1/4 and then 8 1/2. So what I'm going to do is just fold them in this Z pattern, just like this. I'll do that for both of them. And I want these 2 shorter ends are going to connect. And the way they're gonna connect is in a way, they're not gonna be totally centered. So they're gonna connect in a way that helps these other 2x2 or 4x4 pieces. I don't know if I'm explaining this well. This is kind of hard to explain. This is my first tutorial, guys. I'm definitely feeling like I'm like stumbling through it. Hopefully this all makes sense, but I don't even know if you can see this in the camera, in this lighting, but I have my 2, so we had the 4, let me do it this way. So we have the 4 1/2 or 4 1/4, 4 1/4, and then this much smaller piece down here. So I want these 2 smaller pieces to match up and form a 4x4 so that all of this just kind of lays flat. So the way I do that is just to fold up my papers like they will be on the book so that I've got these 2 shorter pieces matched up, and you can see that they don't quite, they're not the same size, so it's not like they go end to end. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hold it all together so that I know it's all staying together. I'm actually gonna use for this, I'm gonna use score tape. I just have one of these score tape runners from scrapbook.com, and on these kinds of things I do use score tape just because I think when you've got something that, let's see, I'm gonna be very, very careful because I don't want this to separate. People are in theory gonna be writing on this, and what you don't want is for this to, like, you don't want to see the glue underneath and feel the glue underneath when you're writing. Like, a lot of times if you put white paper on top of this, or just thinner cardstock so that people can write on it, you can see the glue lines underneath. And I don't want that to happen. And you can feel the bumpiness of it as you try to write, which is just a completely unpleasant sensation. So I usually use score tape for this, but there you go. There's our Z fold. So again, I'm not going to glue it in yet. We're going to wait until the pattern paper has gone down. But you could glue the whole backside right to your paper, just like that, and just have the one element. But usually I will just glue 3 sides and glue it down so that you have space for a pocket or a tag or something else, some other element from the collection kit if you want to include it. But again, it really just depends on the collection kit. It depends on your preference. But yeah, that's what I do. And then I usually have ribbon coming this way and then it ties in front. You could use magnets, but it's definitely challenging to figure out. And I think, honestly, for the cost of magnets are not cheap. I would prefer to use ribbon just as a cost saving measure. And then it also kind of, I don't know, it breaks up the kind of visual going on too, which can be nice. So it really is your preference, but that's what you can do. So there's that page. Again, I'm not going to glue it on yet. I'm just going to tuck this over here. But page 5, our last page, is a top and bottom flap. So you need 2 pieces of paper that measure 5 3/4 by 4 1/2, and you're going to score on this 4 1/2 inch side. So go ahead and get those attached. Mine are my corners again. And I'm going to just adhere those to the top and the bottom. And these ones will overlap a little bit. And that is a perfect place again to add a sticker from the sticker sheet, cut apart, however you choose to decorate that. So there's the top side. Oops, I got a little glue there. And we'll do the bottom one. And again, I'm gonna write my note to myself. I didn't do it this time, but I'm gonna write myself a note to include the darn magnet, because I will forget otherwise. So that just goes right down here on the bottom. Just like that, easy peasy. Oh, I'm a little off center. There we go. All right, so again, magnet. I'm actually gonna put it on this side because that's where it's gonna go, and then magnet down here. And there you go. That is our album. So it looks a little bit like it's in shambles right now, but that's just because everything's not glued down yet, because it all depends on the pattern paper. But this is our album. So I'll flip through it one more time so you can see everything. Right, so here's, let me just make sure my camera, yeah. So here's our flip open. Here's our pocket with our cut apart booklet. Flip up. Here's our 2-sided pocket, so one on this side and one on this side. Here's our Z fold element with an optional pocket behind. And the last page, oops, the last page is just our fold up and fold down. So then you can add whatever elements you want over here. You could add a waterfall, you could add another pocket, you could add a tuck spot. It really just depends on what is available to you through the collection kit or the paper that you use, or just, you know, what you want to include. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I will definitely be making something with this coming up. I have a whole bunch of 6x6 Christmas papers that I would love to get a start on and kind of move through my stash a little bit. So that is probably what's going to be coming up for this album. If you guys do use this and you make something with it, please, please, please tag me on Instagram. You can find me at Eli Marie Studios on Instagram. I would absolutely love to see what you guys make with this. Like I said, this is my first tutorial, so hopefully this was clear enough. I definitely feel like I just kind of blundered my way through this. So if anything was unclear, please leave me a comment. I will absolutely try my best to clarify any parts that were unclear. And I will leave the the cutting guide down below as well. So if you prefer to have that in your hands as you're going, it will be available to you. So if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please do, and hit the like button. That really helps me out, gets me in front of new people. Follow me on Instagram. You can check out my Etsy shop down below as well for completed albums. And like I said at the beginning of this, thank you so much, guys. Asking for a tutorial really, really meant a lot for me, and it was a really nice way to, I don't know, kind of start my YouTube journey. So have a wonderful time with this album, guys. Thanks again, and I will see you soon.